Hello there, me and my team will be discussing about the formulating strategy in this video. Strategic planning. What is strategic planning? Strategic planning is more complex than domestic planning because they have a complex variable. What is strategic? Strategic is the basic of the firm can compete to the other companies. Okay, three reason is going to the international. First is reactive. Globalization competitors, trade barriers, and regulation customer demands. What is proactive? The three proactive is economic scale, growth opportunity, and incentive.
Hello everyone, I'm Sharifah Natasha. Let's have a look at the next chapter learning goal, which is to appreciate the cultural variables that affect communication for both the sender and the listener. Let's take an example of a country which is well known for its diverse cultures, which is India. Under the lens of India, different states of India have different official languages. For India, the official language is Hindi. The people of India are very conscious about social order and status, in which they belong to different groups according to their status. The Indian names are varied based on religion, social order, and region of the country. There are 6 types of cultural variables in communication. First is attitudes. Attitudes underline our behavior, communication, and interpretation. One of the common attitudes that can be seen is stereotyping. It occurs when a person assumes that every member of a society has the same characteristics. The second variable is social organization. The kinds of social organization we belong to can influence our perceptions. Example of social organization includes one's tribe, nation, religious section, or profession. The third variable is thought pattern. The logical progression of reasoning varies widely across cultures. For example, a Canadian man who misunderstood the meaning of double lines on the road in Thailand. He assumed that the lines meant no passing, just as they do in Canada. The fourth variable is roles. Cultures differ in terms of their perceptions regarding who should make decisions and what is his or her responsibility. The fifth variable is language. Miscommunication occurs when two people do not share their native language. This problem also occurs among those who speak the same language. Translation can be as problematic as well. For example, in a Pepsi issue, when Asians say yes, it often means they have hurt you and they are too polite to disagree with you. Sometimes, how is something being said is more important than what is said. Last but not least is nonverbal communication. It is a behavior that communicates without using words, though it may sometimes accompany by using words. There are different kinds of nonverbal communication, which is known as kinetic behavior, proxemics, and paralanguage.
Hi. So as we all know, there are multiple types of non-verbal communications, some of them being facial expressions and eye contact, which plays a huge role in non-verbal communications, body posture, which are far more subtle and less definitive, your body contacts, your appearances, your clothing, etc, etc. I'll give you one example of a culture which I believe you guys have heard of very much, and they are the Italians. They are one of the many people which heavily uses body gesture whenever they speak, whenever they communicate. They are very well known for using their hands whenever they speak. In fact, I will show you some right now. The first one is most probably the most famous one, and it is this gesture. Ma che dici? Ma che dici? Ma chi? And the next one is this. Non mi importa, non me ne frega, affari tuoi. And the last one is this. Se solo sapessi, potessi solo immaginare. But to take you away from what I just did, here's a video to show you how they use their hands a lot when they speak, when they conversate with each other. The video was taken in Milan, Italy about 10 years ago. The Italians use the most body languages when they communicate, and in fact they do about 250 gestures when talking and doing other things. The Italians are also very direct, loud, really hate silence, and tend to interrupt one another when talking, so don't get offended whenever it happens because that's just their culture. There's also this thing called object language and material culture, whereby it studies on how we communicate through material artifacts such as architecture, office designs, furnitures, clothing, cars, and many more. An example of this is how the Mexicans really appreciate architecture and your family photos. Next, you have the monochronic culture and the polychronic culture. Monochronics focuses more on doing one thing at one time, and you can see this amongst the Swiss people, the Germans, and the Americans. Whereas for the polychronics, they tend to do multiple things simultaneously, and they also emphasize on involvement with many people.
In information system, the type of organizational structure, which is the staffing policies and the leadership style, will affect the nature of an organization information system. And international managers find a way in how information organized and the speed to which it flows both internally and externally to be useful. In a decision-making system where many people are involved, such as a Rigi system, is a consensus of decision-making in Japan. The expatriate needs to understand that there is a systematic pattern of information flows. Context also affects information in high-contact cultures, such as in the Middle East, where the information spreads rapidly and freely because of the constant close contact and the implicit ties among people and organizations. Information is often informal in low-context cultures such as Germany and the United States, where the information is controlled and focused and thus it does not flow freely. Information channels and the organization structures tend to be more formal. The expatriate managers need to know how to tap into a firm information sources of information. Example like in Japan, where employees have a drink together after work, and this becomes an essential source of information. Such communication relationships are based on long-term relationship in Japan, which is the same information may not be readily available to outsiders. For Ningen-sei, in Japan, there is communication style named Ningen-sei that needs a human bigness. This style of communication refers to the preference for humanity, reciprocity, a receiver of orientation, and an underlying distrust of work and ideology. The Japanese believe that true intentions are not readily revealed in words of contracts, but are in fact masked by them, in contrast to American verbal agility and explicitness. Moreover, the Japanese behavior and communication are directed to defend and defense for everyone concerned, which is to do so. They avoid public disagreement at all costs. The speed which we were trying to use, which is the information system, is another key variable that needs attention to avoid misinterpretation and conflict. Americans expect to receive information quickly and moving through details and stages in a linear fashion to reach the conclusion. They usually use means of media such as IMS, email, Skype, fax, social media, and family relationship to give all facts up front and get their message across as fast as possible. Americans also need to realize that since much of the world exchanges information through slower message media, it is wise to schedule more time for translation, develop practice, and learn to get at needed information in more subtle ways after building a rapport and taking time to observe the local system for exchanging the information.
I will talk about managing cross-cultural communication, facilitating intercultural communication, and the conclusion. Developing cultural sensitivity is when a manager needs to encode the message for the receiver in a form that they will most likely be understood as intended. For example, in some countries, a casual dress is a sign of disrespect. So when we want to go to their country, we need to follow their rules in their culture. Secondly, we need to use a very careful encoding while communicate with them. Use words, pictures, and gestures that can be easier for them to understand. We also need to avoid from speaking with a slang and idioms. We also strictly need to avoid from using regional sayings with them. We must practice speaking slowly, clearly, avoid long sentences and colloquial expressions, and explain things in several different ways and through several media if it is possible. For selective transmission, we have to build a good relationship with the receiver, and when it comes to meeting, it is better to do face-to-face meeting, but in our current situation, we are only able to do online meetings. Next is careful decoding of feedback. It means when we get the feedback from multiple parties, we can improving our listening and observations skills. Last but not least, follow-up actions. It means we need to respect the receiver by conveying them through eye contact, body posture, and voice tone. For the facilitating intercultural communication, it contains two categories. They are openness and resilience. Openness is traits such as open-mindedness, tolerance for ambiguity, and extrovertness, while resilience is traits such as having an internal locus of control, persistence, a tolerance of ambiguity, and resourcefulness. To conclude it all, effective intercultural communication is an important skill for international managers and domestic managers of multicultural workforces. Miscommunication is more likely to happen between people from different countries or different racial backgrounds. It is important to be alert to how culture is reflected in communication, such as through the development of cultural sensitivity and an awareness of potential sources of cultural noise in the communication process. Thank you.